imagine taking a trip on a National Geographic jet, traveling over 36,000 miles, visiting 6 continents and 12 countries. And did I remind you, it's a 26-day turnaround. Pretty amazing, right? Now imagine being a National Geographic photographer and spending your life doing that, taking fabulous photos along the way. We are welcoming my very good friend and National Geographic photographer, Jason Edwards, to the show. He is going to tell us about his amazing adventures around this beautiful planet, and a very warm welcome to Jason.
G'day, Bree.
Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me in studio. Wonderful.
Jason, you've traveled all the way from Australia to be here with us today.
Yeah.
And you have brought a gorgeous gift with you. You have brought this amazing book with you.
Thank you.
Icebergs to Iguanas. And you are going to sign a copy for one of our lucky winners.
That we are, and you don't even have to come to Australia. I've come to you to sign it. So
isn't that amazing?
How much easier can it get than that?
All right, folks, I need you to do me a favor so that you can win a signed copy of this gorgeous book. Icebergs to Iguanas by Jason Edwards. Please get out your computer, send us an email to win a signed copy. Send your email to lagunawoodsvillagetv@gmail.com. In the subject line, put National Geographic entry. And send us your name and your phone number, and you'll be entered to win a beautiful signed copy of Icebergs to Iguanas. Now, I would really like to tell our viewers how you and I met. And it was indeed on a private National Geographic jet trip around the world.
This is true.
It is true. So we actually started in Iguazu Falls, which is a waterfall system of 250 waterfalls, the largest on the planet, right?
Correct.
It was bordering Brazil and Argentina. Do you remember that morning?
I very much remember that morning. I remember that morning because, like every day of my life, I think I almost missed the bus and the plane on the same morning because it was just so spectacular. And you're right, it's the widest waterfall on Earth. You can't even see to the other end.
No, you can't. Well, you have to get to the other end, you actually have to go to another country.
Yeah, that is true. That is true.
We were staying in Brazil, and we had to get on a bus to go to the Argentina side.
That's right.
To see the Devil's Throat side.
Correct. That's
Remember
right.
We did that, and it was pouring down rain. We were soaking wet.
It was hard to know where the waterfall began and the rain ended. But
Yes,
but you know, it's warm rain and it's so spectacular. And that rainforest that surrounds that waterfall is a biodiversity hotspot. You know, it's one of the last remnants of that type of rainforest left in South America.
Yes, and there were jaguars in the forest there.
Correct, yes.
In the rainforest.
Yeah, it's an amazing pocket of wildlife and plant species, yeah.
Absolutely gorgeous. Yeah. And we had the absolute privilege of being able to do a figure 8 over Iguazu Falls.
Yeah, that's right.
Remember, our pilots got special permission.
Special clearance.
Special clearance.
And I can't even keep it straight with someone with an American accent says clearance, because all I remember is Flying High as we knew it, Clearance Clarence. Remember that movie back in the day? So I spent so much time on planes that I think you called it Air America or something here, but we did have that special permission, and it also showed just how vast that landscape is, and over millions and millions of years, the river cut its way through.
Absolutely gorgeous, yes. And then next on our stop was Easter Island.
That's right, yeah.
And that's where I got my first National Geographic photography session.
Yeah, that's right.
I think my camera was acting up.
Yeah, maybe
that's when my camera was acting up, because I wasn't getting the correct shutter speed, or something was going on.
No, that's right.
I think I was upset that my iPhone was taking better pictures than my Nikon.
Right. But the great thing with you, though, is you were determined the whole journey to get better with the camera. Some people just give up, but you were determined. And these shots here that are on the screen, they're the Moai, obviously, you know, the ancient Moai statues, which were made famous in Night at the Museum.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
That's
they were made
right.
famous there. So this is Tongariki, and we went for the dawn. You were a trooper. You got up early.
What did we get up at 3:30 in the morning?
So
I
it
think?
was early. Yeah,
It's like a 2-hour drive.
Yeah, it was. But we had a great morning because we had some cloud and we had some clear sky. So when that sun came up, there was some contrast and things of interest.
Well,
sometimes it's not like that.
Those photos are unretouched.
Yeah.
That is exactly the color of the sky. Turning from black to sort of that purple, that deep purple hue, to blues, to the oranges and reds, and I mean, what a spectacular morning.
And it's interesting too because there's something spiritual about Easter Island.
Absolutely.
Rapa Nui, you can't go there and see all of these moai sticking out of the ground unfinished and carved into the cliff face, and then see them watching the dawn and not be moved by that.
I know, absolutely. I know friends that have been back there 3 and 4 times because of that. Because of the energy and the vibration that they get from being on the island.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah. So we made our way around the planet. Some of my most favorite memories are of you and I and a couple of the others in the game viewer when we were tracking that lion.
Yes, yeah.
Right.
There we go. And you might recall Serengeti's my soul place. That's
Yes.
I love that. I love that location.
Well, how can you not? I mean, it was all I could do to hold your feet to the ground of that game viewer because you were ready to crawl out, and you were either going to go under the game viewer hoping that lion was not going to be disturbed, which I don't think he would have been. He was putting on a show for us.
Yeah.
I think we were there for about an hour taking pictures of him.
100%. And I mean, I've spent my entire life working in wilderness areas and many, many decades with big cats. So not that something can't go wrong, but that was a great morning, and you can see this picture here that worked. It really was working. Yeah.
Well, I think he flipped 2 or 3 times, didn't he? He just
did,
was putting on his little show for us.
Yeah, and also too, this is a male that has a beautiful face that hasn't been destroyed by years of battle yet, because they often wind up scarred and because life's tough as a lion.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One of our stops was in Chiang Mai, Thailand. And that was fun because such a dichotomy from taking pictures of beautiful animals to now we're switching to statues, buildings, trims, and you had me really focus in on some architectural elements of one of the temples, which I thought was, it wasn't something that I had considered, but I think you look at perspectives with sort of a feeling of texture. Like, what is that texture going to represent in my photo, and how is that going to show up?
Correct, yeah. I'm always looking, when people take photographs, we always get, myself included, caught up in the whole. But dissecting the scene is really important. So if you're a photographer, look for the minutiae, the small areas, like you say, the temple details or the veins in a leaf or something like that. And this is us here in Chiang Mai, and it was wonderful. It was steamy, remember, and super hot. But when you're documenting faith, and these faiths have been going for thousands of years, so there's so much to see. The more you look, the more you see.
Yes, absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
That's like when we're examining our face, right? Where'd that come from?
But no, it's true.
Which, I mean, this trip was pretty hard on our bodies, right? So I'm looking at the photos, and as we're progressing, there's some in Egypt that I look like, oh my gosh, I haven't slept in a month.
No, that's right.
I mean, we probably didn't sleep.
No, I didn't go to sleep.
Well, I think that was coming off. I think Egypt was coming off of the Serengeti, Tanzania, and we didn't have showers. Well, we had a sprinkler, right?
That's right.
We were glamping for 4 nights.
That's right. Yeah.
And
I mean, the thing is too is that this is a great shot, and the climate changes everything.
Yes.
So when it changes your skin, it changes your body chemistry, all of these sorts of things. And because I've been in the field for so long, my body just sort of goes there, and then I look haggard, and then I go home and I lose 10 years off my face. But when I'm in the field, I'm aging by the minute. Yeah.
Well, these pictures, especially of me there in in front of the pyramids. I'm like, puffy. I probably had wine the night before or something.
I think there was wine every night. I think there was pretty much wine every night. But it is, and the thing is too, is that when you're changing time zones, it's hard to adjust. Your body, it's not just the jet lag, it's the circadian rhythms.
Absolutely.
And so we were bouncing, as you said, we circumnavigated Earth. That's literally, we circumnavigated Earth. And we were talking about it before. So I flew around the planet to meet you.
Right.
We circumnavigated Earth and then I flew back. And I think I was only home for 3 or 4 days and then I flew out again, not to do our journey, just on a different shoot.
On another shoot.
And so, I was about 170 by the time I got back from that one.
I know, I couldn't believe how good we looked when we saw each other this morning.
Yeah,
wow, we cleaned up well.
Yeah, we've got something happening.
Well, speaking of your journeys, take us all the way back, Jason. I think you got your start in a Melbourne zoo.
I did, yeah.
A zookeeper in Melbourne.
Yeah, I was. But I actually started shooting when I was 8. So I would use my mum's little Kodak canister camera. Remember those ones that, they were just like a little compact camera, but the film was in a box and you put it in there. You'd know it if you saw it.
Sure.
And so my first pictures were on a school excursion of a Pan Am jet, an American Pan Am jet. And at 8, they let us on the tarmac and I shot this giant Pan Am bird. We went in and I took a photo over the wing. Who would have ever thought that decades later I've been in the air for thousands and thousands of hours? And then when I was 4, I know. Well, when I was 14, I used my $250 for my paper round savings, and my grandmother went to Hong Kong and she brought me back a camera. And I had pictures published through my school. I went to a great school off my 3rd roll of film. And so that was about 14 or 15. So when I got to 18, I finished high school and applied for a job at Melbourne Zoo, and I was offered a job, and so I started a couple of months later, and as a zookeeper working with big cats, and this is what you see now is not, that's down in South America, that's a whole nother thing.
Was that cat declawed?
that cat, 27 puncture marks in my skull, and but so being in the zoo, of course, was an opportunity to be surrounded by wildlife and learn my craft while I was there.
And so before the zoo experience, were you keen on taking photos of wildlife at that point?
Yeah, I think I was. So I grew up in a house it's Australia, of course. So there was always snakes in the backyard and things like that. So we were a bit of a halfway house for wildlife. We had raising kangaroos and dragons and frogs and birds and everything. There was always species. So I've never known an existence without wildlife. So when I started shooting, some of those animals, of course, became my first subjects.
Right. So what inspired you to put icebergs to iguanas together?
Well, I mean, I sat down, National Geographic's in Washington, of course, we've been there for more than a century, and every time I would go, they'd say, "Where's the book?" And I'd say, "Where's the book?" And so we sat down one day and over a glass of wine, maybe a couple of glasses of wine, wrote a list.
That's when great things happen.
That's when everything happens, Bree, And I wrote a list of 40 stories that meant something to me from my career. So I didn't look at any pictures. I just thought emotionally what trips had meant something to me. And some of those.
So you kind of reverse engineered the book.
100%. I went from the end back to the beginning.
Yes.
And so Serengeti, where we were, as you know, it's a long-term project for me. It's been going for decades. And that'll be a book of its own some point. The life-changing image for me, this image on the screen now, that was the last afternoon of a 3-month shoot in Africa, multiple countries. And that herd had been crossing the river and lions have been grabbing them and everything. And I left that park as a changed person.
I saw your photo there, Jason. I was just, my jaw dropped.
Yeah.
I mean, the coloring.
Yeah.
The giraffe, the composition, the wildebeest, I mean, just spectacular.
And like we worked on with your photography, it's less is more. There's only 2 frames in this sequence. I shot this in 1992. That's how long ago. I was a boy when I shot this, basically a teenager. And so I took 1 frame where the giraffe was coming into the scene left of the tree, and then I just waited because the shoot was almost over. I was out of film. And then when the giraffe hit there and the god of photography stepped in and everything worked and the light was great and it stayed with me as probably my most memorable shot as far as an emotional impact.
Absolutely.
So that was with the book. I sort of thought, what stories? That might have been 3 weeks. The shoot might have been 3 weeks. The indigenous children in the desert, was 2 or 3 weeks. Others have been decades in the making, but it had to have an emotional connection for me.
Absolutely, and it comes through in these photos.
Thank you.
Absolutely spectacular.
Yeah, and then I went back through my field journals. I've always kept field journals, 30 years of journals. So I went back to those shoots to look for, there's journal entries and behind the scenes and everything I wrote the text, and that was quite cathartic. I mean, revisiting my life in imagery, but also in the words that I wrote when I was 18 or 22 or whatever the case might be. You know, that was quite surreal for me to relive that experience so personally. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And now you don't have to wait because we have digital photography, right?
Well, yeah.
So you don't have to. You don't run out of film.
No, well, this is true, but we also shoot too much. Remember, we talked about this a lot.
100%.
You know, and people love photography, and I'm sure there's people watching who are enormous photographers, but my advice is less is more. Remember, we worked on that, less is more. So you don't need 1,000 frames, you just need a few good ones.
Well, I have 1,000 frames of the moai that morning, and
that's right.
They're all the same.
Yeah, that's right.
With the exception of maybe a little bit of the light changing.
Yes.
But I can't delete them.
No.
So now they're just taking up space. So yes, less is more.
Less is more.
So what's the most dangerous situation that you've ever found yourself in?
Wow, you'd have to narrow it down to a country or a continent. I've got no genetic DNA for self-preservation. But I mean, I think probably, and it's, I was hunted by a hippo one night, working in a swamp in Africa. And so I was there with a villager, and we were in a dugout canoe, and they chased us into the reeds, and they were trying to smash their way in, and we couldn't get out. And we were there all night. And
so scary.
But you know, I've had to run from lions. I've had to do a lot of those sorts of things.
Well, yeah, if you want to climb out of the game viewer and go sit with them, you have to run from them.
That is true. But I had you to document it if I was getting chased.
Yes.
I'd be going, shoot this, Bree, shoot this. And
the photos that I've taken of you that they're showing on the screen are the ones I want to keep, not the other kind.
No, that's the other thing. But you know, the interesting thing is physically, I've had so many diseases and infestations and everything.
That's something I hadn't even considered.
No, so I've had larvae living behind my eyes, and I had larvae in my ears, burrowing into my ear canals this year, a couple of months ago.
Really?
But you know, I've had MERS, which is 82% fatal, and brucellosis and bilharzia and swine flu and bird flu, and arms reattached, fingers cut off and reattached, and the back of my head stitched back on, and discs punched out of my neck, and broken bones and everything, and split stomachs, and all of those kinds of things which happen from impacts, and sometimes animals or sometimes humans, it just depends. So when I look back at my career, because I've spent my whole life working with wildlife and in Indigenous communities, when I think, there's been so many close calls in that scenario, but the long-lasting damage or the things that take the longest to recover are all of these microorganisms or the surgeries or something goes wrong.
Interesting.
And it can take months. I mean, I had 3 blood viruses after one shoot on the Bolivian border, and I lost 12 months of my memory. So I had 12 doctors, and I was unconscious. I don't even know how. I was in an isolation ward in Australia. I don't even know how many weeks I was in there. But every 15 seconds I had an electric pulse going through my body, and it fried my brain so severely that I have no memory of 6 months before the hospital and no memory of 6 months after.
Is that
just
right?
like wiped 12 months. And so the surgeons were pretty concerned. But when I went back to that area of South America, and I was walking with someone from the village who I had no memory I'd ever met before. And I sort of said, wow, we need to shoot this and this. Wow, that's amazing. And then finally he said, but you've shot all that before. And I went, I've never been here before in my life.
Oh my gosh.
And he said, what are you talking about? You've been here before. And I went, what? And so we had to piece it back together because my brain
really
had wiped
scary.
it out. Yeah.
That is really, especially being so far away from home.
Yeah, well, thankfully it happened. I went into hospital 8 hours after landing from that shoot.
Oh, good.
So thankfully I got back, because in those places, if you go to hospital, you wind up with no kidneys, So
They'll sell them on the black market.
100%. Sell my eyes, sell my kidneys.
So conversely, what's been the most magical experience?
Yeah.
And you can't say me on the private jet.
No, well, that's you. You're up there. You're in top five. But I mean, moments like I just described before with the giraffe and wildebeest. But I also remember there's life-changing moments when you go to Antarctica for the first time. And it is like nowhere else. It sounds like a cliche, but to watch the subtlety of the light move across the landscape is so incredible. And as a photographer, you really have to get the math right to get the exposure right, and then you have to work on your composition. And so I remember that quite vividly, but also too, I was in the Amazon, and there's a story on the Amazon in the book, and I could hear this roaring, like the largest train you've ever heard.
The morning of our last morning in the Serengeti?
No, this is in the, yeah, that's exactly right. The line's in near the tents.
That's crazy.
That's right. But, you know, it was one of those things, and I thought, that sounds like a train, but it couldn't have been. I was in the middle of the Amazon.
Iceberg.
45 minutes later, a wall of water, finally. So for at least, I don't know how long it was going before I heard it, but at 45 minutes later, it just got deafening and more deafening. And I put my hand out from underneath the bamboo I was hiding under, and I couldn't see my hand. The wall of water was so intense. And then 25 minutes later, that front moved on, and the night erupted in insect life and steam and humidity you can't even imagine, because everything was so wet. And a million insects came out. It was staggering, you know. So
it sounds surreal.
It was surreal, because you can't imagine that much water is possible, even like Iguazu, more than Iguazu. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Wish you would have been able to get that on video.
Well, no, back, you know, like if you stood out in it, and it was like you could barely breathe with the humidity and the amount of water falling from the sky. It was so intense.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what's the most difficult part about storytelling through photography?
Yeah. That is a fantastic question. I'll come back. No. Come back to you with it. But I mean, I think probably for people, storytelling is, how do you connect someone who wasn't there to your experience?
Absolutely.
And so you and I have a shared experience. We travelled the globe together. So when we look at your pictures or my pictures where we were together, we can relate to that. We can remember it over a glass of wine. We know the temperature, we know the smells, we know the sound. So in storytelling in photography, you have to remember that the person who's looking at your pictures was not there. They're not eating that food in Chiang Mai. They can't smell the coriander and the lime and everything like that.
Right.
They haven't had to do the walk or the hike or get up early or anything like that. So when you're doing your compositions, you want to lead people in. You know, have the lines leading into a picture. Don't have anything very, very close to the edges, because that draws the eye out. So when I'm doing it, change the angle. Remember, we did a lot of that. Get down low, stand on a chair, get up high, and all of these compositional elements that then people go, oh, now I'm in there. I'm in that story. That's the hardest thing.
Draws them in.
Yeah, what draws them in.
Yeah. So what's the most bizarre type of transportation you've had to take on your journeys?
Oh, wow, I have done it all. I wouldn't say it was transportation, but I actually had a humpback whale come up underneath me at one point. And
did you just catch a ride?
It was just, I had my hands on the back of this humpback whale, and the humpback whale was just basically looking for a massage, but I wasn't.
He was looking for one.
Yeah, that's right. But I mean, you know, it's interesting, because there's probably not a form of transport, or not from yak to helicopter to whatever, that I haven't done. But I remember being in the Middle East, in a desert valley, looking for ancient Roman statues, and these messages got passed down by the Bedouins through the valleys. You know, everyone's yelling, and then they said, "You're meant to be in the town. There's some government officials you're meeting." And I was so far away. So next thing you know, you do camel, don't you? And I said, yeah, for sure.
Gosh.
And I'm in the ruins where Indiana Jones, they filmed that scene. I jump down, I get out of the desert gorge, there's a camel. I've got my turban on, and I'm riding through the world's most amazing ruins at sunset, with cameras over my shoulders, no one to film it, no one to shoot it, galloping with all of these Bedouins living in the cliffs, yelling at this white guy with the turban and the cameras running along. And I'm sitting there thinking, it was amazing. I'm thinking, Indiana Jones has got nothing on me, you know.
No.
So yeah,
absolutely.
It was an amazing opportunity. Yeah. Yeah.
So how do you get ready for those types of expeditions? I mean, you must go on so many that change directions. You know, you thought you were going into one type of scenario, and all of a sudden you find yourself in some. How do you prepare for that?
So the problem with the clothing, and you would know this, you just traveled the globe, you know, you've got to have things for hard work, you know, the right kind of boots and lightweight pants and clothes that don't sweat too much, otherwise you dehydrate so fast. But then I might go straight from there to the Himalaya, where it's minus 20, or Antarctica or something like that.
Right.
So I have a whole wardrobe of clothing and boots for different climates. And then the camera gear is the camera gear, and I buy gear that just can survive those climatic conditions, but I might have to take more batteries or extra bodies, camera bodies, in case they die. I'm always killing them, or lenses. So the kit goes up, but if I'm doing underwater work, there's a whole separate underwater work kit with cameras and dive tanks and all of that kind of thing. So if I get home with enough time before I turn around, then all the gear has to be rebuilt and all the clothes have to go in and get serviced and things like that. So a little bit of planning helps, but it is handy that I don't feel the weather. So if it's,
That's right, you wear shorts the entire trip.
The whole time, yeah. So if it's minus 22, my body just says, okay, I'll run to minus 22. If it's 120 Fahrenheit, then I'll run to 120. I'm lucky like that.
You've been really able to navigate those waters because of your ability to adjust to any climate, any time zone.
Yes, correct.
Right?
And
food.
You
just go right on into it. It's just another day.
It's just another day. And I mean, one of the things that I've tried to do in my career is value the privilege of it. I mean, and we talked about that, didn't we? We're getting these opportunities to go to these places, and any one day is a trip in the lifetime for anyone else.
Right.
And so I've been with Geographic now for 24 years. I've been on the road for more than 30. And so it's one of those scenarios that even if I revisit somewhere I visited before, I'm very aware that other people will never get to do that.
Right.
So I wake up, glasses 3/4 full every day. Some shoots are devastatingly difficult to do. Disease in people or animals being hurt or whatever. And I go home and I cry in my hotel room that night and I have a drink or something, but I get up the next morning and I get it done again. But that bouncing around, I'm conscious that the stories I tell have to connect people with those places, but also make them value those places, all those people and those faiths, because I work under every faith. I'm in Islam, I'm in Christianity, I'm in Buddhism, I'm in Hinduism, every animalism, I do it all. So if I'm doing a faith-based story, I want people to understand that they are the same people as you. Forget the media and all of those sorts of things. That's just so easy to get caught up in that. No, they want the same thing strip it away. They want their children to be well fed and educated and safe.
Right.
That's what everyone wants, and so I take that really quite seriously when I get to work in countries that are misunderstood.
Wonderful. Well, on that note, Jason, we're going to take a quick break. And before we do, though, I want to remind our viewers to enter the contest to win Jason's personally signed book, Icebergs to Iguanas. You can enter the contest by sending us an email at lagunawoodsvillagetv@gmail.com. Send us your name and your phone number, and in the subject line, put National Geographic entry. And we will enter your name into the contest to win a hand-signed copy of Icebergs to Iguanas, Jason's book. We'll be right back.
Ready to hear the good news? From teaching others how to use their iPhone at the Mac Club or volunteering at the History Center, our community saves thousands of dollars. And there's more. The special volunteer luncheon happens because of sponsors. Recently, it was Memorial Care, Ivy Living, and Freedom Village that stepped up to help offset the cost. These are just a few of the many good things that happen in your community. Help be a part of it and volunteer today.
Celebrating 65. Exciting until you wonder, should I apply for Medicare? If so, how? But I'm still working. What is Medicare Part A, Part B, C, D? Are there penalties involved? We make it easier for you. We discuss the pros, cons, and myths. Call 1-888-225-6468. We help you understand, enroll, and use your benefits so you can go back to doing the things you love.
And welcome back to the show. Today we're sitting down with Jason Edwards, National Geographic photographer. Jason's got a special gift for one lucky viewer. Enter the contest to win a signed copy of Icebergs to Iguanas. Please email us at Laguna Woods Village TV@gmail.com and send us your name and your phone number so we can get a hold of you if you are one lucky winner. In the subject line of your email, please write National Geographic entry. And for those of you who entered and who really would love a copy of this fabulously beautiful book, you can pick up your copy through Amazon.com. It's a beautiful coffee table book.
Yeah, thank you.
And such a source of inspiration for photography. I know that we have the photography club here in Laguna Woods Village. And you know, the photos that come through from our viewers, we put them on our sunrise, sunset segments.
Oh, fantastic.
Absolutely gorgeous.
Yep. And I mean, if you've, and that's the thing, I mean, you've got avid photographers obviously in the community.
We do.
But also, you know, the book is a behind the curtains kind of look at what I do and how I saw those stories. So if you're interested in how someone like myself does what we do or thinks about it, then the book's probably for you, or if you've got someone who's interested in photography. And at the back of the book, I ran a scholarship, photography scholarship that I built for National Geographic for about 8 years. And I'm planning to rebuild it. So at the back of the book is that criteria of how I did the judging and my thought bubbles. Keep going back across and back one. So in this page spread here, it's got the thought bubbles about what I look for in a frame and how I take every shot. Is it doing this? Is it doing this? Is it doing this? So if you want a little bit of a very inside my brain kind of snapshot of photography, I put that in the back of the book because most people love photography, but they struggle with square one. So, you know, the book is the stories and the journal entries and the behind the scenes, but it's also one of those journeys you can take, and I'm sure people will relate to their photographic journey as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I think this would be a great thing for the photography club to maybe incorporate in one of their classes.
Yeah, very much
so.
so.
Go over all of your bullet points.
Yeah. Well, next time I'm back in LA and I'm here, often I'll come down and meet the folks at the club if you like.
I love it.
Yeah,
I think that we could have a live studio audience. We could have question and answer sessions.
That's right. You know, people can yell at me and go, "Your pictures aren't that good."
Well, you know, I was teasing with our friends and I said, I don't know, Jason taught me a little too much. I think my photo looks better than his.
Hey, I want everyone to succeed. That's okay. I'm not insecure about that.
Not a chance.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So we've talked about, you know, your experience with National Geographic taking you to every corner on this globe. Do you have a favorite shot in mind?
Wow, a favorite shot of all. Wow, Bree. Wow.
I know. We're digging deep here.
Yeah, we're digging deep.
Over 24 years.
Probably, you know, it's interesting. As I said to you, emotionally, probably the giraffe and wildebeest shot. However, I think for me, the thing that's been a key to success for me, and I'm not avoiding the answer, but I think the thing that's been a success for me is I find everything interesting. You know, so when I travel, that's how I stay on the road. And so what drives me forward photographically is to get that next frame that becomes my favorite. So, I mean, there's so many frames that are in the book. I mean, there's a leopard and mother cub touching noses in the book. And I went to that tree 6 days in a row and she was there by herself. And the propellers are spinning on the dirt plane. People are yelling at me on the two-way, all of this kind of thing. And I made my friend Frank, the driver, you know, my guide, "Stop, Frank, stop. We'll give it 17 seconds." And he said 17 seconds and he hit his watch. And a cub walked out of the grass in that 17 seconds, up that branch and touched face. So, you know, so that's one of my favorites. But on our trip, I took a shot, I don't know if you recall, of a raindrop on an acacia thorn, and maybe I didn't show everyone because it was just special to me, but inside the acacia thorn was an upside down acacia tree inside the raindrop.
No, I don't remember.
Yeah,
this.
so it was one of these things. Sometimes I take these frames and it's quite not that I don't want to share them, but it's quite, I see something in them that other people won't. So I sort of saw these raindrops, and then my brain said, get out of the vehicle and go, you know, maybe I was near camp or something, I can't remember now. So I started focusing on these raindrops, and then I noticed that one of the trees in the background was in one of the raindrops. And it took me a while, but then I've got the tree, so it's a raindrop with an upside down acacia on the end of an acacia thorn. So things like that can give me a little bit of pat on the back
Well,
moments.
I remember heading out on a drive one morning, and you had pointed out the ornamental grasses and the little dewdrops that were on the grasses. So you zoom in really close.
Correct,
you get such a beautiful visual of this texture.
And I mean, I think that's one of the things that you don't have to necessarily go to exotic locations to find wonderful pictures.
At all.
But for me, I see the minutiae in everything. I see all the smallest details as well as the large, which can be quite overwhelming. But that's how I see the world in 24 by 36, you know, the dimensions of 35 millimetre.
Right.
And so I travel the world visualising that rectangle vertically. And so when we see these things, all the time, my brain is ching, 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 ching. Even talking now, I could shoot frames of you with the backgrounds and everything, because that's how I want to experience the world. And so some people have said to me over the years, you must miss so much because you're always looking through the lens.
No, you see everything.
I see, it can be overwhelming. I see everything. I walk down a market and I'm seeing cooking, and I'm seeing clothing, I'm seeing wrinkles on hands, and the smile lines, and suffering, and biological stories and everything. It's like a whirlwind of opportunity.
I would imagine you were taking in 100 times more than most people.
Yeah.
Where they just kind of glaze over, and you are seeing the minutia in the different aspects of everything that you see.
And everything. And that's why, and you saw I don't need a lot of sleep. I love sleep.
Right.
I'm not an insomniac. But there's so much to see and experience that often when I get back and I do my selects for the story to see how I told the story or our journey, that's when I come from the third person perspective down into my first person experience. So we travel, we experience things, but when I've got those moments at home, then I come back in and say, did I tell the story? And I pass through that same journey again, but from an overlooking perspective. Did that work? Does that touch my heart? Did I do myself justice? And for me, and this is a really easy rule for anyone to adopt, is it better or different? So that's my motto, better or different. It doesn't have to be better than anyone else done in the world, because photography is such a personal journey.
Right.
But for me, it's like, is it better than I've done before or different than I've done before? So if I revisit somewhere, I've got a point of reference. If I go somewhere for the first time, I judge myself really harshly. So am I taking a shot? Let's say I'd been to Thailand before, but let's say I go to Tajikistan and I've not worked there. If I take a photo, my brain immediately gives me that rule. Is it better or different than I could have done if I was back here? So I work myself a dance. I work myself again and again and again. Is my composition good? Am I low enough? Am I wide enough? Is my lens correct? Is my depth of field, how much is in focus? Is that correct? Is it better or different or better? And that's in my brain 24/7.
And I would imagine, Jason, that would take away any type of regrets after you leave location. Because I know for me, so many times, I kind of just get tired. Like, I'm tired, and I know that it's your life, but photography I love, but I don't make money. That's not how I make my living.
Yes.
So I get tired, and I just sometimes want to be in the moment.
Yeah.
But I know when I get home, I'd be like, oh, why didn't I just take the time, set it up, do it correctly, and get that shot? Because I'll probably never be in that part of the world again.
No, and I mean, I say this next sentence to you with love as a friend, is that you were so determined to work hard, which I love. That's why we spend so much time together. I spend more time with you than anyone.
I know.
But as a mentor, I saw that internal battle, because you were seeing shots that you didn't necessarily know how to translate, which was why I was there. And then you would translate them. But once that door's open, it's a bit of a Pandora's box.
It is.
Because then you keep going and you keep going and you find yourself 30 years later with 1 million frames. So I completely get that. And then your brain is working on the composition and the lighting and all of these things that the photographers who are watching know that it's like golfers. You know, golfers get that one shot right and then they think they'll get it again, and it doesn't happen again.
Never happens again.
That's photography.
Yes.
So it doesn't matter how much you know, you're chasing that white rabbit all the way through your creative part of your brain.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, we touched on it a little bit, but when we look at your photos, you know, we can never fully grasp or understand what you're going through at that moment. You know, you mentioned almost missing your flight or getting called out because you knew, instinctively you knew that there was something that mother lion was up to, waiting for that baby. And it kind of reminds me of when we were in the Game Viewer trekking that lion, and everybody else had gone back to camp. All the other vehicles, I don't know how many 7 other vehicles, everyone left and went back to camp, gave it up. And you and I got what I consider my National Geographic lion. I mean, and it was worth the patience.
Exactly.
So how many nights are you spending in a tree? How many? Well, I can't even imagine.
No, and that's the thing. And you know, it's interesting, funny you mentioned tree, because I spent 5.5 weeks sitting in a tree for 20 hours a day. And it was 117 during the day and 0 at night. And it was a nocturnal, it was a night animal. And I took 1 frame in 5.5 weeks. And I was covered in swarm ticks, these little pinhead ticks. If you scratched yourself, it was like having the mange.
What keeps you going?
Well, it was a critically endangered species, and I was determined. It took me 3 years to convince an editor to let me do the story. And you know, you've met my wife. You know, Megs was 9 months with tick tweezers, getting all the ticks off me for 9 months.
Right?
But you know, it's also, like you said, I feel the same way you do. So I don't ever presume I will go back somewhere again.
Right.
Even though it's my job. So I might not get back to Antarctica or Bhutan or Cambodia or Thailand. I just presume I won't. And even if I go back, I may not get to that location. Even if I get to that location, the people will be different, the time will be, the lighting will be different, the weather will be different. So I try and maximise that, which means it's incessant. You know, it's incessant, but you know, less is more. I've learned to try and slow that whirlwind of my brain, and then when I get home, I remind myself with that juxtaposition that I'll be back in the world again soon, because as much as I love being at home, that passion to document, like you have, you want to go back again, but we all try not to be too hard on ourselves if we miss it. And I still miss it. I miss it all the time. But you try not to be hard on yourself and say, okay, that's as good as I got, but I could have done this better. I could have twisted this way or twisted that way. I'm making it out as if I'm not really hard on myself. If I miss something, it's like sometimes I'm going, no excuse for having missed that, especially at this point in my career. But I'm trying to learn to be nicer to myself.
You know, my motto is 1% better every day.
Yeah, well, 100%.
No matter what you do.
No. Right? Have you ever seen Ben Stiller, you know, Walter Mitty, the movie Walter Mitty?
I have not.
It is the most wonderful movie, and it's about a photographer. And the Time magazine. And it is amazing. It is a beautiful, beautiful movie. And it was a story from the 50s, I think, when it was first written. But anyway, I won't spoil it for you, but Sean Penn is in the movie. And there's a scene with Sean Penn, for anyone who's watching, where he's on a mountainside. Now, the people who have known me a long time, thought I was Walter because of these adventures. But the people who have seen my evolution in this creative turmoil have said, you've turned into Sean Penn.
Is that right?
So you have to watch the movie, and it's wonderful, it's beautiful, and I think I'm on that Sean Penn mountainside these days a lot, you know, where I have to forgive myself and then evolve into someone else where I can just watch or just experience or whatever. So,
well, maybe we'll be able to show that film for our viewers.
It's amazing. It is amazing. One of the best movies I've ever seen. Yeah.
So you've been face to face with anacondas. Chased by tigers.
Yep.
How have you been able to survive all of these different types, not only environments, we talked about diseases, animals? Yeah.
I mean, I'm 827, Bree. I just keep clocking up the years, but But I think one of the things that we lose in these wonderful societies that we've built for ourselves is instinct. We're not in touch with it. People aren't in touch with their instincts anymore. And so, you move along and we're busy. Their phone's ringing, we're looking at our watches, all of these sorts of things. But the world doesn't function like that for many, many humans. Right. And in the wildlife, in the wild world, the natural environment, it's all instinct. Everything's trying to eat everything else.
Right.
And so for me, because I've never known anything different, and I was a zookeeper for 12 years and I worked with wildlife, and then I started travelling alone for months and months on end, and I'd fly into South America and pop out 8 countries later with no Spanish or no Portuguese, and crossing borders with no visas and getting shot at in the Congo and all of these things. So I've been so in tune with my surroundings, not that I can't get it wrong, I would never be so arrogant to say that, but if my body says now's the time to run, and I'm calm, the more difficult it gets, strangely, the more happier my brain is. But if my brain says run, I run. If it says duck, I duck. Or if I feel that there's a bad energy coming from something, I'll politely extricate myself. Or with wildlife, I try and use those decades of knowledge to put me in the position that gets the shot that I need. But, I think for me, it's very much it's almost a spiritual connection with what I do, because if I'm not really in tune with the environment, whether it's human or wildlife or nature, A, I'm not going to get the shot I want, but B, also it can go sideways so rapidly. So
it seems like you just sort of put that fear aside.
Yeah.
And
it 100%.
It doesn't infiltrate your ability to focus and to follow through with.
I don't do fear. Like I've been scared, but when I work, if I get off a plane in a country I've never been to before and I have to have those cameras straight away in my hand, I move around as if I've always lived there. Like literally, not through ego, not through arrogance, nothing.
Right.
I'm so comfortable in moving around the planet that, there's times where that can go and people go, no cameras, and it can get really disturbingly bad. But then I just go, okay, that's completely fine and whatever. But my default position is that I'm at home everywhere on Earth.
I feel like also too, when people see the camera, they think authority.
Yep.
In a way.
Yeah, for sure,
right?
For sure. Yeah, and also too, it's look at everything we have. We're so fortunate in the countries that we live in that our wealth, even in our day today, is more than people can imagine in some other countries. And so when I travel, if I take pictures of people, I don't necessarily show them. I don't know if you remember this or not, but because if they want to see them, I'll show them, but I never force that engagement because the one device I might show them is a camera that's like 3 years, 4 years, 5 years of their annual salary.
Right.
Or my iPhone, and it's just a phone to us.
Right.
But that phone is $2,000 to a person who's on an annual income of $300 per annum.
Right.
So I try and engage on a different level, but I also take some old prints of my family. Just literally 6x4 prints. And they're beaten, they're in my journal, and I show them those to connect, because a photo is something everyone can relate to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
My goodness. So what is your advice for amateur photographers? Like what would be, give me step 1, 2, and 3.
Okay. Put your ego aside. It's not about you, it's about the story. So there's so much ego in photography. Amateur, professional, it doesn't matter. Everyone gets caught up, and this is what I created. Okay, that's great. But think about the story. Just put that aside. Did I tell the story? Did I capture it the way I wanted to? And that's probably something you didn't expect me to say, but purely because you have to, because if that's in front of you, you're not going to get to the story. You're just not. If you're thinking about yourself, you're never going to get to the picture. It's not about you. You are literally, in Bhutan, where I work often, the Buddhist monks there regard me as a bodhisattva, which is a humble title, which is basically someone who's earned the right to pass on, but stays to help.
Okay.
And so you can't have that. So to them, they're well aware that I see myself as the tool, not the actual point of it. So I am just the vessel through which the creativity happens. And I will get diseased and get stitched up and rebuilt and everything and just keep going because the picture is what counts. Right. I don't count. Secondly, take less frames. Just take less frames. Doesn't matter if it's on your phone or any type of camera, just take less. less is more, fewer frames are better, and then stop. If it's something that's not going away, you know, the light's always changing, but if it's a tree or a flower or whatever, step back and think, what made me want to take that picture in the first place? This is my number one rule for myself.
Okay.
Why did I want to take that picture? And then I find that one thing, and here's my one thing rule for anyone watching. I allow you, you might remember this, you can have one thing in any picture, and only one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Why did I want to stop and take it? That one thing. And then I focus on what that one is, I build my picture around that. And I mean, I think thirdly is, it's like golf. And you can have a wonderful day and be on a high for a week.
Right.
Or you can be really hard on yourself. And it's meant to be fun. You're meant to work hard at it, but it's meant to be fun. And so people get so caught up in their wins and their losses and the missed opportunities that it sometimes can detract from the joy of creating. And remember, humans have been telling stories for 60,000 years. Aboriginal Australians, First Nation Australians, 60,000 years, 55, 60,000 years. We were doing it in artwork on walls. Now this is our storytelling. So don't disconnect yourself from it, you know, just find the fun in it. And if you don't get what you want, learn from that. But don't get hard on yourself. That's for people like me to do.
Well, you certainly have fun in your stories, in these amazing photographs in this book. Jason, what a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
I feel so honored that you've joined us today, and I know the community they've got a lot of takeaways, and I know they're probably going to want you back.
You let me know. As long as there's wine, you know I show up.
As long as there's wine. Well, I think some of the members here like wine also. So, folks, if you're just joining us, this is Jason Edwards. He works with National Geographic, and he put this beautiful book together for one lucky winner out there. He's going to sign this. So if you'd like to enter the contest, please send us an email to lagunawoodsvillagetv@gmail.com. Please send us your name and your phone number so we can get a hold of you if you are the lucky winner. And if you're not, I feel bad, I'm sorry for that, but you can pick up your copy from Amazon.com. So with that, Jason is going to sign this beautiful book for one of our lucky winners to be announced very soon.
Let's do it then.
Let's do it. And he's got beautiful handwriting. Of course he does.
And thank you so much for having me. It's been wonderful to be here.
I can't thank you enough for traveling from Australia to be here with us today. Jason Edwards, National Geographic photographer. All right, folks, that's going to do it for this amazing interview with Jason Edwards, National Geographic photographer. We will see you next time on Village TV.